any questions, please raise your hand, and we do have a mic here. We can get the answer for your questions.
Very powerful music. In one sense, I mean, when we as academics or activists, I'm talking of those who are very prosaic like myself, when we talk of issues, I don't think they're as powerful as when someone like Roshan or someone like MC Kash, they sing, because with few words and within few minutes, they convey a lot. They convey a lot in this context. And I mean, I wouldn't give his age away, but all I can say is that he's a very young person still, at least compared to myself. He's a very young person. And yet, what we find through songs and work is find a very strong determination for freedom, for Azadi, for justice, for peace, everything together. But what we also find, and this is why, for instance, I've been a big fan and have been appreciating his work, is because I find also hope. This song is driven not by despair, not by the feeling that nothing can be achieved, but by hope that something will be achieved, and that something is going to be Azadi in the long run, but other things in the short run. So the first question, in fact, it's a conversation, but you can also ask me any question if you want, is, and going back to some of the images, because people here may not realize, and I'm talking images of kids with, showing the eyes and the hurt eyes. Could you say something about the pellet injury and what are the specific ways in which Kashmiris who are living, I'm not talking those who have been killed already, but Kashmiris who are living have to deal with violence in everyday life?
First of all, I have to say that just looking at a person with a gun every day is what is difficult. I come out of my house, I see an Indian army personnel fully armed to the teeth, hand grenades hanging from his bulletproof vest right outside my home. And it's true for every Kashmiri, everywhere, anywhere in Kashmir. Talking about how they try to control, it's a military state, it's a militarized colony, if that is a way to, but yeah, it's a militarized colony. They use guns to control the populace whenever the populace is sick and tired of being controlled by guns in the first place. And then, if they're not using, to be honest, they can go anywhere. If they're in the air, they can be lodged in your eyes, they can be lodged in your face, they can be lodged in your legs, in your back, or as recently happened, a 13-year-old boy had it in his heart. So, and I don't know if he survived, because there are so many injuries right now. There are like how many thousands of people? 8,000 people.
Yeah, there are 30,000 plus have been arrested, or at least under suspicion of and or risk of being arrested. There are around 8,000 plus who have been injured. And one thing we have to keep in mind is that a lot of people who get injured, or they don't go to the or they run away from, or they move out of hospital because they don't want any police record. It's apart from the killing part, what goes on in this case is that police would file a case against you for being injured and saying that you are part of some protest, and therefore your passport can be a problem for you to get a passport, your job can be a problem.
Is done, yeah. So you don't have a career for that.
So these are young people, we're talking so many young people specifically, whose future is ahead of them. So even if, for instance, they survive being blinded, they would have cases against them. So in fact, if I'm not mistaken, majority of people may not be part of the record because they would not want it to be recorded. See, that's the thing.
See, I asked Professor Dibyesh about these things, how many are injured and all, because there's no information. There's very little information coming out of Kashmir because the internet has been blocked. Mobile phones have been blocked. There are news channels that are blocked. So I know nothing of how my family is. I haven't been even able to talk to them. It's 60 days, for the past 60 days, just for the past 60 days, more than 80 people have been killed. And the killers who killed these 80 people, they're roaming in the streets. They're free. And it hurts, it makes me angry that the world over, that the Indian state is so powerful that it controls not only its own media, it has control over how information comes out of Kashmir, so that nobody anywhere around the world has any idea of the war crimes that Indian state commits in Kashmir. I mean, they fire live bullets and pellets and tear gas in hospitals. They have shot dead women in Kashmir. Children lie in their jails. They torture them and they make videos out of it. They chain them to each other. Their feet are chained. They beat them up and they make them say Bharat Mata Ki Jai. They make them say Hail India in the jails, and they want them to say Pakistan Murdabad, death to Pakistan.
Yeah, in fact, you're right. There was a particular video that came out. There are various evidence, and these are all by the videos. The various evidence of the troops going and throwing stones, right, at houses randomly, right. So they are not houses where they suspect anyone to be there, but they're doing it out of frustration or because they know they have the power to do it and they'll get away with it. We have got situation where, in a sense, hospitals have gone and they have shot people there, or they have arrested people from there, they have thrown tear gas. There's very well documentation of the ambulances being attacked. So this is why I said war crime, right? So the point is, what do you think outsiders, let's put it the outsiders, not Indian outsiders who are occupying outsiders, but let's say those outside South Asia, let's say Norway, what can people do which may help and provide solidarity with Kashmir?
So I was in Sweden. I've been in Sweden for 2 weeks. I've been meeting a lot of Swedish people as well. This is what I tell them. This is what I have to say. Because this is the least that you can do. Just Google Kashmir, find something, anything that you think that should be out there, and just write a hashtag of Free Kashmir and demilitarize Kashmir and just post it anywhere, wherever. I mean, when we Kashmiris, a few of us who have internet or anything, we always ask the people everywhere around the world to join us in bringing forth the hashtags like Free Kashmir. Because when we use Free Kashmir on the internet, there are trolls, there are Hindutva trolls, fascist trolls, who come and who openly advocate genocide against Kashmiris. In fact, the Twitter account of a verified account of an Indian Digital India, it's called, it published a poem which called for the army to break the bones of Kashmiris and to kill them everywhere, anywhere you see them.
By the way, this particular Twitter handle is connected to Ministry of Information of India. So it's an official thing. Of course, Indian government later said it was not that something that they're not approved. But some of the pictures here, in fact, see, we outside could see more about what's happening than many Kashmiris, because you would not know people were confined to curfews. Kashmir has been under siege for almost 60 days. By siege, we mean essentially internet is completely off, except for those who have broadband, and very few would have broadband. The mobile internet doesn't work, right? Then, of course, telephone did not work for many days. Then it comes and then goes away, right? That's the kind of thing. People can't move from one part of a locality to another locality. That's the kind of siege we are talking about.
I would really like to ask you, because you went to Kashmir a few days ago, in fact. How was it? How did it feel?
I was there almost 2 weeks ago, around 30th of August. 30th of August is UN Day for the disappeared. Right? So, for instance, I'm inspired by one of the person I mentioned in my talk, Parveena Ahangar, who was a victim, but also, and that's how sort of we came together in some sense through her. She's someone who is a victim, but also human rights defender, right? So, in that sense, I went to meet her because 30th August is UN Day for the disappeared. 30th August, they would have vigil every year, protesting against enforced disappearance and asking for justice, but appealing not to the Indian state anymore, because they have no trust in Indian state, but appealing to the international community to put pressure. Now, this 30th August, I had planned to go again, and some of the images, and this 30th, they had a plan, Association of Parents of Disappeared Persons, right? They had a plan to have an exhibition of, apart from the protest, exhibition of photographs. And that some of those photographs are by Roli Mukherjee, she's an artist from India, and some of the pictures there behind you, right? So that was the idea to go. Now, of course, because of siege, most people said you should not go. But I did want to go because I wanted to sort of meet her because that's something inspired me. It was a selfish motive to it, a great extent. Now, I'm not someone who's into fact finding, but I'm also aware that India, with all the claims for democracy, can stop any people when they want, and they've stopped people from coming there. So I went quietly and I came out quietly. But the thing I noticed, few things, was slogans everywhere, very clearly, of all kinds of slogans. But primary focus remained of freedom and against India. That was slogan was there. Second was a lot of despair, and I would use the word, I'm not into zombie films, but a lot of people, I felt that I'm in some kind of zombie land where people are just walking and there's no, almost there's no future, in the sense that they don't know what's going to happen. So everyone asked me, when do you think it will end? And some of the people said, when do you think we'll get freedom? So that was the kind of discussion people had. And this is what the big gap was, not actually learning experience was not in Kashmir. I mean, you could see, I mean, I know I also saw the police officer, by the way, there was this police officer who was accused by the court of killing extrajudicially a young person. So the court said he should be arrested and tried, right? So that's it. The state government went to the High Court to say no, he should not be punished. High Court said no, he should be punished and prosecuted, not punished, prosecuted. The government went to the Supreme Court of India in Delhi within few days to get him released. And the Supreme Court of India said he should be investigated, but he should be free and he should be allowed to continue his duty as a police while being investigated, which implies he can scare the victims or the witnesses. But he was, I didn't meet him, but I saw him also, right? So in a sense, very much a police state, that was very much obvious, but also the defiance of people, especially young people, was very clear. So the defiance and state oppression, which is a recipe for anything could happen. And my anxiety, more of a learning, was coming back to Delhi, the capital of India. Most people don't know, most people don't care. So the big gap between Kashmir, Srinagar is the only place I went to, and I'm aware that Srinagar is still much better off than many of the villages. Most of the operation takes place in small towns and villages, right? So the gap between Kashmir and Delhi is something that made me very disturbed, because what we find is a colonial state which is ruled by a right-wing government that is majoritarian, bordering on fascist like AKP and Erdogan. It's very similar ideology, very majoritarian, and large section of Indian population who don't know. I'm talking the poor, the Dalit Bahujan, who would not know or who would not have much knowledge about what goes on. That's why they do it. And of course, sections you mentioned here, including by the way very prominent media figures who are calling for genocide against Kashmiris, saying that let's suspend democracy, send tanks, send fighter planes, bomb them, kill them. That's what sadly I witnessed.
And they've been doing the same since 90s. They've been calling for full military action against Kashmiris ever since. But the fact is that if there are no more political spaces left for Kashmiris, they will choose the way of the gun, as they have already done in 1990. I mean, right now a lot of young kids are just picking up stones and throwing it because they have anger, but they know the stones are not going to do anything. Sooner they will turn to the gun.
Yeah. And maybe see this is the risk, because in the 90s when they turned to gun, there was an armed uprising. It didn't come on its own. Of course, Indian government would say Pakistan sponsored and Kashmiri Muslims are militants. That's it. But the reality is, Kashmiris taking up arms in early 90s was a product of number of elections, for instance, apart from other things, being rigged by India. Right? So there was an election in 1987 where everyone knew that it's being rigged. So if you win the election and you're not very pro-India, but you're willing to work in the system, you'll be sidelined and he will be given power because he's going to say, I'm going to work closer to you. Kashmir, even by Indian constitution, has certain rights of autonomy, but even those autonomy are gone. On that note, I mean, do you have any questions for him, me, or both of us? Carrying on discussion. Okay?
Hi.
Oh.
You could give mic.
Yeah, do we have the mic here?
I think I'm good. Hi. First of all, I really love your music. It's amazing. I have actually very little knowledge about the Kashmir conflict, but being an activist myself for the Sri Lankan conflict, I'm being young and I actually do know how it feels to be helpless, not knowing what to do. And for a while we have been working very hard, and in 2009 it was declared that the war was over. And after that we have been sort of trying to come to a conclusion, as in the war was over, but the conflict is still there, the people are suffering and things like that. But my question is, what is your pathway to freedom? What are you, like, I see the vision, but what routes are you guys planning to take? Because in the start, we, as in what we did was we wanted to have an international investigation to prove that it was a genocide, so that we could ask for a self-determined country ourselves. But because that has been failing, and we have been seriously for the past 7 years, I have no idea what we've been doing. We've been helpless. We have no idea, and now we're in a situation where we are actually in the point to giving up, because it's become this crucial situation where the Tamils abroad are, you know, they've come into a different mentality. The people there, they're just trying to survive. They are not really interested in freedom. They're actually just trying to get 3 meals a day. They just want to get a shelter, and if it means obeying the army, then they're doing it. That's what they're doing. So they're just surviving. So I'm wondering, how is it for you guys?
We are also surviving. We are trying to get by. Kashmir is not a rich society. There are a lot of people who have to go out in the streets every day to earn their living. And the curfews, it means that you can't earn, you can't go out, you can't earn. So, but our society is built in a way, the traditions of our ancestors, they still remain. So that we try to help each other out. If somebody does not have food, we try to go door to door during these days, the curfews, and we see if anybody wants help. On the international forum, I mean, since 1947, Kashmiris have been asking for the right to self-determination, which was promised to them by the United Nations, which is, you know, all that Kashmiris want: the right to choose their own destiny, the right to just, you know, to have a dignified life. So, of course, we want India to be tried for their violations, for the human rights violations. But just to see even the demilitarization happens right now. Like, all the troops, 700,000 Indian personnel that are stationed in Kashmir all over, even if demilitarization happens, a lot of Kashmiris will see it as victory. You know, just to make Kashmir as a no-guns area.
So you guys are very dependent on the UN for them to sort of declare.
Yeah, I mean, it's either that or a widespread urban guerrilla warfare. You know, that's the only 2 options we have, and we have tried the urban guerrilla and the rural guerrilla movements and all that, and it didn't lead us to anywhere. You know, 100,000 deaths in 20 years, it did not lead us to anywhere. Now we are always trying to do the non-violent movement method of going out and protest marches, but you know what happened? We were massacred. You know, we have documented massacres of, there are so many massacres all around Kashmir that have been documented. 70 people, 60 people, 52 people, 30, 45 people, you know, different massacres in different areas. Even towns have been burned down. So, you know, we have tried the violent method of achieving independence. We have tried not to protest non-violently, but you know, the violent way has not led us anywhere. It has given us so many graveyards in Kashmir that every locality has one. We call them martyrs' graveyards, but I grew up around one. I know a lot of people who had one, which they had to look at every day. But
as an outsider, I'll add to it that, see, the people have, and there are different range. There's a range of method people use, and of course, there's no common forum where they can discuss which method to use, as you can imagine, right? But in this context, in 90s, primary method was armed uprising, which was crushed very brutally, because of course India is a very brutal state, and they could crush it, right? Second, but right now, I mean, of course, there are very few, but who have still taken that one, but very few. Many youngsters take up stone, right? But majority of people still are out protesting non-violently. And I would say even protesting for the songs such as that of MC Kash and other singers. He's not the only one. There are writers who are coming out, there are poets who are writing about it. So in a sense, as an outsider, what I see is the kind of resistance that's taking place now. I don't think Kashmir had that in the past. In a sense that it's a wide range of methods being used. And so in a sense, the fact that, let's say, he's singing here or performing here, in a sense, challenges the Indian narrative. So that itself is part and parcel of what's taking place. UN is there, but the problem is, UN is a system where you cannot not appeal. While you know the limits of UN,